Okay guys, welcome. Thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to be here. This is kind of fun. I think it's interesting to have a group of guys who are all this focused on working on themselves. You know, taking this time out and really learning about different areas of life. It's incredible, and I think focusing on yourself is amazing. You're the best asset you'll ever have. In fact, you're the only asset you'll ever have. So this is a chance to work on ourselves, and I'm going to be talking today about the subject of entrepreneurship. Now, in the interest of finding out who this is really going to appeal to, how many of you have ever thought of running your own business, have your own business right now, or just know you will in the future? Let me just see a show of hands. Okay, so just about everyone in the room. So what I want to do today is talk about my experiences of entrepreneurship and give you it as I've really seen it. Because to tell you the truth, the only thing that I really know is the experience of me and the people that I've coached. And for those of you that don't know me or don't know me that well, my background has been, I started as a coach. That was where I began. I didn't begin as a business person, I began as a coach. And I began as a coach because growing up, it was like a mini obsession for me. Learning about what made people tick, understanding body language, understanding psychology, understanding what really made people confident. And that was the big one for me, by the way, was confidence. How many guys in this room feel like you could stand to benefit from having more confidence? Let me just see a show of hands. Okay, that was where I was. I was in a position in my life where I didn't have the confidence that I really wanted. You know, I actually felt like I missed opportunities in life because I wasn't confident. I would constantly be not the quiet one in the room, but I'd never really express myself in the way that I wanted to. I know that part of what you guys are going to be learning here is expressing yourself in the way that you want to and really doing the things that you want to, both in your business lives and your social lives. And I had that issue, is that I had so many things I wanted to do, but I just couldn't do them. I didn't have that in me. And I was so afraid of what other people thought that I didn't actually do it. I was terrified that someone was going to point me out or I was going to suddenly be in the limelight, and that was death to me. Now, people are always surprised by what I do now, because the truth is, when I was a teenager, the idea of public speaking was hell to me. Like, I couldn't bear the thought of it. Now look at this. It's crazy, and this is a small event compared to an event that I might normally do. But this was like death to me. But when I started, I wanted to coach, and I wanted to work with people in the area of confidence because that was what excited me. I think people miss out every single day because they're afraid of what other people think. They're afraid of the rejection. They're afraid of standing out, of being different. And so I got to a place where I said, okay, I need to fix this for me. And it took me a little bit of time to really work out what was what and start taking those risks. But by the time I got there, I was ready to coach people. And I started to work with people one-to-one, and I started to do a couple of seminars here and there. But none of it, I didn't see myself as a business person. I was a coach. And one of the difficult parts of all that was I was on one hand trying to master my craft, which was coaching. And on the other hand, I suddenly, as soon as I started really coaching properly, I found myself starting to be a businessman. Because I suddenly had so many people I was coaching that it became a company. I started a company, and that started to grow a little bit. And as soon as it did, I got exposed as not knowing anything about business. Now, I knew certain things that I could do or should do, but I just didn't know how to make that run and how to push that forward. So that was something that became a big deal to me, was how do I actually understand business and how do I move forward with that? Now, I want to go through a couple of stories with you that taught me a hell of a lot about business before I even had my own company. Because when I started out, I was studying real estate. That was at university, that was my course. I was in real estate. And I thought at the time, aside from coaching, which was my big dream off to the side, I also thought that I would deal in property somewhere along the way. And halfway through my program, one of the top companies came into the room, CB Richard Ellis, and they said, look, we want 5 people in the whole of the UK to go to China and work on our business. Immediately, even though at this stage I knew I wasn't going to be in property long term, immediately this was something that appealed to me. Because I was like, this is, China. I get to go to China. I get to work in a completely different environment. I'm all about experiences in life. Anything that can give you an experience, I love it. And also, one of the things I'm going to be talking about later on is how Any experience, as long as that gives you some element of success, can give you credibility for elsewhere. Okay, but I'll talk about that in a little while. So I decided, I really wanted to do this thing. And they said, okay, look, but we should tell you, this is available to everyone on your program. And we had, 150 people on our program. But they said, but it's also available to every other program like this across the country. So in total, they were looking for 5 people, a couple of boys, a couple of girls, and people were applying in their thousands. And on my program, they said, right, what you have to do in order to qualify, even in order to be chosen from your little program, you have to write an essay. And the 2 best essays will get selected to go into a pool with all of the 2 other best essays from all the other courses across the country. So I wrote this essay, and I really worked on it. I really wanted this. I hadn't wanted something this badly the whole time I was at university, but I really wanted it. And I just felt like it was different. I've always wanted to be different in life. I've always wanted to do something that wasn't quite the norm. And so I really tried on this one. And I gave in the essay, and I got a call about a week later saying, you got one of the 2 spots. You got one of the 2 spots to then apply to the main round of interviews. What I then found was I started asking friends, how was your essay? How was your essay? I started talking to everyone, and they said, oh, I didn't write one. And for most people that I spoke to on my program, they hadn't written an essay. Now, when the people first came into the room, there was this buzz in the room. Everyone was like, this sounds incredible. We're going to China, we're going to work there, we're going to do this, working for the biggest property company in the world. Everyone was so excited, and barely anyone had written an essay. So there's me thinking, well, I've written an essay. It's one of the top 2 in the whole course. Barely anyone had even written one. And then when I found out why, I found out that when the people that came said that people would be applying from all over the country and thousands of applications would be coming in, everyone suddenly had that switch in their mind that went, what's the point? So no one really applied. Everyone kind of backed down. And by the way, for the stuff you'll be learning this weekend about social interactions, that's what happens with a guy sees a really beautiful woman, and in that moment he thinks, oh, everyone wants her. And what he doesn't realize is barely anyone is going up to her because everyone's thinking the same thing. And so I was like this on this program. My essay was chosen. I was one of the 2, so I was excited now. And then they said, right, you're going for the next round of interviews. So I had to travel to London to go for this interview. And I did this interview, and very quickly, one of the things I realized early on in life is that one of the greatest abilities you can have is the ability to sell yourself. And this was what I brought out in this interview. This was the thing that was important to me. So I really worked at it. I really went for it. I got through that interview, got through the next interview, and eventually got chosen as one of the 5 that went out to China. And so I went out to Shanghai that summer, and I was suddenly in this place where it was like, when you get to a place where you feel like you've broken through a barrier of success and you've done something you feel is big. And then as soon as you arrive at the next stage, you're like, oh God, now it's like a whole new level. And it's suddenly scary at that level. And that's what it was like for me in China. I suddenly got to China and I was like, this is the beginning. This wasn't the end. Getting the job wasn't the end. This is the beginning. Now I've actually got to prove myself. And I was sat at this desk in China, and I didn't know what to be doing with my time. And no one really gave me anything to do with my time. And so I was sitting there bored out of my mind. Bored out of my mind. For a few days, I hated it because I had nothing to do. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at all these guys around me, and even the Western guys around me, they're fluent in Mandarin. So everything they're saying, I can't understand anything. I'm just sitting there. I can't even learn from them because they're all talking in another language. So in the end, I always had a strong kind of feeling in me that whatever I'll do to create, I'll do. Now, those of you who watched my speeches before, you'll know I talk about the idea of waiting versus creating, and that you have to be a creator. You have to create at every opportunity, not wait. And my decision was I can either wait here and do nothing, or I can start doing something. So I went to one of the directors and I said, look, just give me the phone book. Give me the phone book. I'll just call through people. And at that stage, I barely knew what we were even selling. Right? But they said, you can talk to people and see if they're interested in commercial office space right now. So I'm like, fine, give me the book. So I got this phone book. There's all these, Chinese companies in there. And as soon as I called up the first one, I quickly realized this was going to be very difficult, me being English and trying to ask whether they wanted any commercial property space in English. And so I started talking, and no one understood me. And then I thought, well, okay, what's the first thing I need to do here? Because whenever we're trying to decide when we're doing something in life, how can I do this? You've always got to think of the thinnest slice that you can bring it down to. What's the thinnest slice that I can bring this down to that I can do next? Rather than being daunted by this thing, what's the first little thing that I can do? And I thought, well, the first little thing that I can do is I can find out how to say one line in Chinese that's going to get me to someone who speaks English. So I would then get on the phone, and in my head, I would practice line, and I'd practice it. I got to a point where I'd then get on the phone, and I'd say it in kind of a stunted way, but I'd have the line in my head. So I'd say, 帮我张导会说英文的一位同事. And in that moment, someone would go,对. And they would put me over to someone who spoke English. Right? In that moment, they'd have it. So I go, oh, brilliant. So I now have someone who spoke English. Now I could actually make a sale. But that moment was the moment that counted because I couldn't have got to that stage without that. And so what I learned is the concept of layering. The concept of layering. Taking one thin slice, getting that done before you worry about mastering the next stage. Now in business, it's about taking the immediate issue in front of you. If I'm trying to set up this company, if I'm trying to go further in business, I've got to find out the immediate thing that's right in front of me and do that first. And so I started making these calls. The people around me were laughing at me, as they always, they're going to, right? You start speaking in broken Chinese and people are laughing at you, and that's fine, you deal with it. But what happened was I ended up making a sale. And the sale was to a Nike representative in China who then sent me $400 worth of Nike vouchers for finding them some office space, to which the people around me then got insanely jealous. Like, this kid's just showed up and he's been sent $400 of Nike vouchers to go and spend at the shops. All right, so I was really happy at this point. I was like, this is really going well. Now, about a week in, a guy shows up. He's an English guy who manages the company across all of Asia and Europe. So this guy's he's a big guy, right? He's an important guy. He shows up at the office. And he's walking through the office, and I always have my radar on in business. I've always got my radar on for, like, who do I need to meet? Who's important for me to meet right now? And when I was there, I saw this guy walking through the office, and I thought, this guy is important for me to meet. I know that. I know that by the way everyone else is treating him. So he walked through, and as he walked through, he said to me, listen, can I have someone experienced who knows the retail sector around Shanghai and can show me around? Now, I'd been there 1 week. 1 week. It didn't even occur to me that I shouldn't do it. I just thought, yep, I'll show you around. What do you need to see? And he said, I need to see all the different malls and all the different shopping sectors and so on. I said, yeah, let's do it. He said, brilliant. So before anyone even had a chance to talk, and I said it quietly enough that no one else would really hear, because I knew the more experienced guys would look at me and go, what the hell is he doing? Like, this was a managing director of half the world, and I'd been there a week. So he said, all right, come on then, let's go. On my way out, I had to, because in China, you can't get, like, if you don't know the characters, you can't even get a cab anywhere. Because it's not like you can write the name down in English and show it to the cab driver. You've got to even know the characters. So I had to go to one of the guys in the office, not tell him why I needed this information, but I had to go, yeah, listen, what's the main shopping center in China? And he goes, well, you can go to this one over here. And I went, that's fine. So I took this, I gave it to the cab driver. He'd written it down for me in the characters. I showed it to him. The cab driver took us there. Me and this guy, we started walking around, and he was talking about, well, so what are the yields around this area? And I was making it up as I was going along. I was just saying it, right? And he was going, oh, that's really interesting. And we were walking around and looking at these different shops and so on. And he said, so is this kind of the main strip? And I went, yeah. It's all happening here. You don't need to go anywhere else. And he was like, wow, that's really interesting. And we started talking. I started asking him more about himself and the business back home and so on. And it got to the point where by the end of probably 2 hours of walking around and not seeing any of the retail, we just started chatting in a really friendly way. And he said, you know what, we could really use someone like you. And immediately my brain lights up. And he goes, what do you think of the office here in China? Right? I'd been there 1 week. He goes, just give me your honest opinion on the characters in the office. And I went, well, Peter, I started talking about things. But I didn't know anything. But I was in that position where I thought, you know what, my character, my personality is going to bring me through this. And sometimes in business you have to have that. That thing of, you know what, I don't know everything I need to know, but I know my personality or my character is going to carry me through this. And I got to the end of this situation and he flew back home and I got a call from him. And he said, listen, when you finish in China, come and see the HR department with me because I don't want you to go through the graduate scheme back home. I want you to you can come and work under me. Right? So immediately my brain lights up again. I'm like, wow, I don't have to go through the normal channel. I can just go and work directly under this guy. So I'm thinking, this is incredible. This is like, I've fast-tracked everything. And the lessons I learned were, layer your skills, do one thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. And then I learned that you should take a risk. If you see someone you need to meet, go meet them and let your personality shine, let your personality do the talking, even if your knowledge can't. And that if you take those risks, you can fast-track the normal routes. And I got back home, and everyone was worried about jobs. The market was terrible. Everyone's worried about jobs. And I'm thinking, well, I got this all figured out. Mine's sorted. But I also had this inner conflict because at the same time, I knew I wanted to be a coach. I knew I wanted to go and set up my own business, and I knew I wanted to do my own thing. And I got home, and I got a call from this guy, and he said, you know, you're pretty much there. Right? You're going to come work with me. You're pretty much there. As a formality, I need you to go and just speak to the HR department. Now, I said to you that one of the most difficult things I found was when I started, I was in coach mode, but I needed to be in business mode as well, because I needed to understand how to actually grow this thing. And over time, I learned a few things about actually operating a business. And I got a lot to learn yet. I'm still humbled by this whole thing. But what I'd like to share with you is some of the things that I've actually found over the past few years in doing this and see if you might be able to benefit from that. I think even if you've been running a business for a while now and you're experienced in business, understanding these things again and taking them on again won't do you any harm. Okay, so I'm going to get you to grab your pads right now. And I want you to write down my first point, which is, for God's sake, just start. Just start. If right now you are in a position where you have an idea, you have something you want to do, just start. Do something. There's this terrible perfectionist mindset that we have in our culture. That unless I'm ready, unless I'm completely ready, I'm not going to do it. Now, if I'd have waited in China to decide when I was completely ready to show a guy like that around, I never would have done it. And I never would have had that opportunity in the first place. We have to be in a position where we say, I'll never be completely ready. I have to find a way to start now. Even if I go back to that thin slicing concept, what's the first thing I can do? What's the first thing that I can do? And you know what's funny? There's this whole perfectionism is a joke. Because there are very few people in the world who are genuine perfectionists. Like people always, I'm a perfectionist. That's my problem. I'm a perfectionist. In my experience, there are a tiny, tiny percentage of people in the world who are actually perfectionists. The rest of them are disguising cowardice as perfectionism. It's really cowardice. It's like saying there's someone I'm attracted to over here. I'll do it when I'm ready. And we can say that we're waiting to get ready, or we could be honest and say I'm just being a complete coward right now. That's the choice we make. And so what happens is when people make it about, well, I'm not ready yet, I need to make sure it's perfect, they're making it about something else. They're making it about circumstances, when actually we have to make it about an identity issue. Who do I want to be in life? Well, I want to be someone who takes action. I want to be someone who takes charge. I want to be someone who pushes forward no matter what. Can I do that right now if I'm being a coward about not starting something? No. All right, so let's start. And there's a very good friend of mine who's a known writer in London, wrote some amazing plays for the West End, done some incredible things. He said that, we were having this interesting conversation the other day, and he said, when as a writer you get writer's block, one of the things they teach you is to lower your standards. If you get writer's block, lower your standards for what you're expecting of yourself. Isn't that kind of cool? We have insanely high standards of ourselves. We have standards that say we can never get it wrong. We can never screw up. And you know you wouldn't expect those standards from anyone else, but on some level we expect it from ourselves. In order to get over our writer's block, or any block in life, we need to initially lower our standards a little bit. How can I lower my standards in order to get started? I'm going to grab this flip chart here. Am I hurting any camera angle with that, or is that cool? We good? Okay. So I need to lower my standards in order to break this ground and get in. That's the first thing. The second thing is, one of the things I've found in business is that most of what you will do will fall flat. Most of what you will do will fall flat. Not some, most. I can't begin to describe the amount of things over the last few years that I have done that have completely bombed, that have just gone nowhere. And they're all in my area, right? Because think of this, at this stage, I'm very proud of where I am, but in my area, not like failed business ventures that I then abandoned. No, in this area now that I'm talking about, there are many things that I have done that have completely fallen flat. Most of what we do falls flat. And we have to be prepared for that. What's the problem? Can somebody tell me, what's the problem if you're not prepared for that fact?
Giving up.
Okay, at what point do you give up? Okay.
After you fall flat.
Okay, so after you fall flat, you give up. Why do you give up at that point?
I don't know. You just, because you fell flat and you feel bad about it.
Okay, let's get this gentleman a mic at the back.
I'd say it's because you don't know like where to go next. You're not planned for it, so you don't know what happens next. You're not sure.
Maybe you don't know where to go next. We'll get this gentleman a mic here.
For a lot of people, it's the sense of failure.
It's the sense of failure.
Yeah.
It's the why me mentality. It's something specific to do with me. One of the most incredible gifts that you can give yourself in life is the realization that everyone is screwing up just as much as you are, if not more. In fact, some of the best people are screwing up 20 times more than you are. I was very fortunate in the sense that when I went into business, I had some partners and I had some people around me who were fantastic in business and were a little bit further than me too. So I got to watch them as they developed, and they were a bit further than me. And I got the privilege of seeing them screw up big before I did. So then when I would, they would be a little bit further than me. So when I would trail them, if you imagine, they would be like here, and I would still be back here. Now, when they were here, they would have this massive screw up, this massive thing go wrong. And I would see it. So then, as I grew and got to that level and faced a similar screw up, maybe it was the same one, maybe it was a different one, I went, oh, okay, but that happened to them as well. Like this was supposed to happen. Most of what we do will fall flat. The problem is for the people in business who expect everything to go right. And when they expect everything to go right and it doesn't, they feel like it's some sort of personal failure, and they feel like it's something to become emotional about. Most of what we do will fall flat. Some of the biggest opportunities that I've ever had, or thought were the biggest opportunities that I've ever had, completely died and nothing happened with them. Have you ever had an opportunity you thought was going to be huge? You thought, oh wow, this is going to be a big deal. You got really excited about it. And then nothing came of it. That happened to me so many times. As soon as one thing that helped me realize that most of what you do will fall flat is getting an agent. As soon as I got a TV agent, I got sent to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And everyone in that world has this meeting where they go, oh, you're great. Yeah, this is great. This is going to be huge. Oh, I can't wait to, and they get you all pumped up about it, and then they leave, and you never hear again. Like, that's it. You never hear again. And you do meeting, I would have 2 of those meetings a week. And they would never go anywhere. Never. And I got to a stage where, and my staff will tell you, I would get back to the office after another meeting where it didn't go anywhere, and I'd be like, I could have been working on the business for that hour. I've gone to another freaking meeting, hasn't gone anywhere, and this is just a waste of time. I'd go back to the office, and I'd be like, I've now got to catch up, and I would get a bit frustrated with it. And then the next time I'd get a call about a TV meeting, I'd go, what's it about? And they'd start telling me, I go, has it been commissioned yet? And they'd start talking about it, and I go, all right. And I'd go with a completely different energy because of what I'd already experienced. Now, the funny thing is, the more of those I did, the more attuned I got to what people were really looking for. And I got to a point where a couple of little things started to bite. I started getting invited to a couple of shows, getting invited to a couple of morning programs. And then last year, I had a really good break when I did This Morning, a big show in the UK. I did that for a period of about 6 weeks. And I was on there every week, and suddenly I was there. And then after that, I would start getting a few other calls. This year, or the end of last year, we just got called into a meeting for MTV, for a brand new show. Get called into a meeting, have the same meeting that I always have with people where I don't think it's going to go anywhere, and then suddenly they get a call back. They go, oh yeah, well, no, we want you. And then that's become like a big thing this year, is we're doing a full-on series with MTV. It comes out later in the year. It's been an incredible thing. But most of what you do will fall completely flat. And we have to be prepared for that. The way that we prepare for it is we have several plates spinning. Have several plates spinning at the same time. Don't just have one plate spinning, have several. How does this conflict, by the way? Can anyone tell me how this conflicts with traditional thinking on focus? Let's get a mic over here.
Like if you have several plates spinning all at the same time and they all sort of fall flat, then when you go into a downward spiral feeling worse about what's going on.
What if you have only one plate spinning and it falls flat?
I guess you'd have more enthusiasm to try again, I guess.
Do you think?
I
Or do you
probably
think
would
you'd feel
work
like you
that.
really had no options?
Yeah, you're right.
What if you had a few plates spinning? What does traditional focus thinking tell us? We can maybe over here? Yeah.
You'd spread yourself out too thin.
So if you have many plates spinning,
You'd spread yourself out too thin.
you'd spread yourself too thin. And there are tons of books written on focus that say you have to focus on one thing. In order to do that well, you have to focus on one thing. The problem I have with that is that very often you don't know what thing is actually going to produce